We work to make a living, for money, as a duty to society. Rain or shine, we work. That's the rule, the strict rule of capitalism. But is it strict? People, goods, information. Money makes the world go round.
Capitalism is destructive competition.
We can't do without it. We can't stop it. The more we have, the more we want. This is the capitalism of desire.
To be told, be creative or you die.
Here is the man who identified the engine of capitalism.
Marx did admit that the capitalist system is the most powerful animal that or engine. You must have a revolution.
Here is the man who identified the contradictions within capitalism.
I think capitalism is a show. Donald Trump can be in a major phase of capitalism.
Create, consume. Create, destroy. Why do we do it? What drives us to work?
Desires don't want to be fulfilled. Desires want to be multiplied.
We're going to go to the front lines of the world economy to hear about money and economic desire. New York City.
Was that here? What's that again? She said at the very end of it, it's like your ultimate goal is to start a conversation. You know, when you're just pitching and trying to hit everything on.
Welcome to the front line of capitalism. This is where capital and ideas meet. Entrepreneurs line up to seek capital. Will this be their first step toward creating new wealth?
Tweeted about this. It was out for like a month, and he got up to like 1,000 users. Top 15 most popular. So the hope is that.
Do you need fundraising, or like do you need capital, or do you just sort of build this organically?
New York venture capitalist Jonathan Stroll links ideas and money.
It's important for us to spend a lot of time with startups, get really involved in the ecosystem in New York, meet companies that are really young, that are looking for capital, that have great ideas. Mergers and acquisitions, right? How we make money as an investor is when our companies are acquired. Like Apple and Google and Microsoft, Alibaba as well, who are just buying companies left and right. That's how we make money. That's how we make our investors money. That's how the entrepreneurs make money. And that's how the big ideas continue to live on. Can I get the signature? New Orleans? Small?
With milk?
Yeah, can I get half and half? Thank you. This is my little trick in life. Honey in your coffee. It's my secret weapon. Don't I get exhausted, you're saying? Coffee. Coffee is the best thing for me. I don't get exhausted. I have maybe 5 or 6 cups of coffee a day, and it keeps me going. I meet with entrepreneurs all day, and I meet with them in coffee shops. It's a casual type of experience. See that up there, the Freedom Tower? That's the Freedom Tower. One of the most beautiful parts of New York over there. That's where the World Trade Center was.
Stroll is meeting a man with a new idea. He's creating an AI system that makes the hiring process more efficient for companies. The system automates conversations with interviewees. The aim is to improve corporate efficiency.
Great. Well, why are you interested in being a software developer at Acme? I love the team, and I would like to become part of it. And then she could respond, and we have all these kinds of like funny little witty responses in there, so people could stumble upon funny things or like kind of enjoy the conversation. What we realize is that when you make the conversation more engaging and a little bit more fun, people are more comfortable talking and spending more time talking about themselves.
Wade and Wendy, what Drew is building is sort of that perfect representation of how do we help people find jobs quicker, and how do we help businesses make better decisions? You know, as we look at what artificial intelligence will do to displace jobs, Wade and Wendy is a perfect example of the opposite. They're using artificial intelligence to help find jobs. So I think that's
when technology and humans are working cohesively, that's how you're gonna. If you look at it from a humanizing process, it allows people to be more human. It allows them to do the things that they want to be doing, or that are human in nature, where technology really can't replicate.
It's not about building things. It's about building.
Our thesis at Indicator Ventures is what we call digital efficiencies. It's how do we make the world more efficient? Not just marginally, but by a lot. How do we make businesses flow better? How do we make consumers' lives better? And we measure that based on saving time and saving money. And there's absolute value in that. Things like that, technology can really change the world, but it's the basic technology. It's not some shiny new photo sharing app. It's basic things like internet and scalable, cheap things that the 99% of the world can really benefit from. And that's what I look at as an investor, and try to do the best I can to help balance that as much as possible.
In capitalism, destruction is ever present. Day by day, new technologies, new business models are locked in combat. The driving force behind growth is innovation. When entrepreneurs innovate, they are creating, and they are also destroying. This is the core dynamic of capitalism described by Schumpeter. Schumpeter ranks with Keynes among the leading economists of the 20th century. Schumpeter devoted his life to probing the essence of capitalism's dynamic nature. The answer he found, he called creative destruction. To create, we must destroy. That is the code of capitalism.
nowadays there are many issues in world economy. For example, the low growth rate, especially among developed countries, and expanding inequality, and also anti-globalism and so forth. So what do you think is the biggest economic issue at this moment?
The starting point really is to accept the idea that there is a paradox between, I would say, two factors. One is that we see the expansion of a lot of new technologies. The digital world is really starting to occupy our economic scene, and that it is a booming field, so to speak. Yeah. Now, on the other hand, you don't see the economic growth of the advanced economies. There is like a disconnect between the new technologies on the one hand and the kind of slow growth that we experience over the past decade. There is a mystery, there is a paradox. The optimistic will say it is because it's only starting. You will see in a decade or so that the growth potential of these new technologies will be obvious to everyone. But there is another interpretation that you can suggest, and which has the merit of reconciling the discussion that we have with the rise of inequalities, and especially in the US. You have a very narrow group of people at the top of the wage salaries which benefit from the new technologies because, they are the broad people who, with, just an iPhone, send message all over the planet and give instructions, move financial assets just by a click. So those people are much more powerful than before. The hedge funds of the world, with few teams, they are able to sort of monitor the world. The core of the population, the middle class group of the population, the people working in the services, in banks, in insurance companies, in all the bureaucracy that has been generated in the 50s and the 60s, those middle class people, they do not benefit from the new technologies. In fact, to some extent, the new technologies replace them, make their job obsolete. And it's only in this group the people who are maybe the lower in the scale of income, who manage to survive in the restaurants and whatever, because those jobs are not easily replaced by the robots of the world and the software of the world. So if you put that things together, you understand why, although lots of technologies appear to be booming all over the places, they do not create growth because there's a massive group of people who are sort of replaced, who are not made more productive by the new technologies, but whose productivity somehow is cancelled by the new technology.
Technological progress is accelerating. Will that continue to widen the gap between the haves and the have-nots?
The fear of technologies and machines to replacing workers has always been there. It had very powerful consequences. Just to give an example, a very powerful example, I think. Look at the peasants in the agriculture sector. Well, it is perfectly obvious that the power of the new technologies have, destroyed the peasants all over the world. I mean, certainly in all of the advanced economies, there's no more peasants. In France, we are at 1–2%. I don't know how many, people working in the field you still have in Japan, but don't think it's very far of that numbers. So you could see that the power of productivity is such that workers become irrelevant. The peasants left the countryside to move into the cities. And what happened then? And because there was excess supply of agriculture, and they moved to the cities, and here there was an industrial revolution going on.
It really was a revolution, a turning point in history. for the economy of desire. The steam engine, the spinning jenny, the march of machines that changed the world. The peasants left the fields and went to work in the factories. At first, the factories were just a new place to work, but the machines kept evolving, and their human operators became less and less necessary.
Now, maybe this is what we are experiencing, that is in the tertiary sectors, in the service sector, and they are pushed out by the new technologies, but there's no way where they become more productive somehow. So first you have lots of inequalities. They try to work where they are needed, and yet where they can find a job is not highly productive.
President of these United States, Senator Bernie Sanders.
Working people are working longer hours for lower wages, while almost all of the new income and wealth is going to the top 1%. That's wrong.
A rising chorus of voices is challenging capitalism. This movement among the younger generation says freedom isn't enough. There must also be equality.
So yes, we were all sad that Bernie had lost, but in DSA we bring the momentum and the hope because we have a transformative vision, a positive vision.
And if you went back even just a couple of years in the US, socialism was really still kind of a dirty word. It was immediately sort of an insult. I mean, of course, there have always been socialists in America. But for this to become kind of a mainstream idea was honestly much the work of the Bernie Sanders campaign. And what he did was he brought concrete proposals like tuition-free college and universal health care, Medicare for all. And he really brought to the public consciousness how these were not new ideas, they were not terribly radical ideas, but these were socialist ideas.
We need workers to come together and realize that if they assemble and they form unions or whatever kind of group that they need to form, they can affect real change and they can shut everything down. Because if workers get together, they have immense power. Labor creates all wealth, right? And really,
Teamsters went on strike. Our whole economy would collapse because no one could
all the
ship
warehouse
anything.
workers at Amazon, So really, I think the solution, and I mean this is an oversimplification, but really the solution lies in organizing the workforce.
Yeah, if we maintain our democratic principles, then I don't think we have anything to worry about. And I think that that's really what socialism is.
Uno, dos, tres.
Support for socialism echoes through the land of the free. What would the father of socialism make of this?
Karl Marx had the right definition of capitalism. Marx was wrong about many things, but he was right about some things too. This is what he said about capitalism. He stated that capitalism is a system in which people invest money in making goods with the objective of eventually having more money and making a profit.
Let's return to the age of the Industrial Revolution, the age of Marx, and the subject of his analysis. Merely exchanging goods for money does not create more money. But if money is invested in making more goods, and more money is generated,
the buyer lays out money, but only with the sly intention of getting it back again. The money, therefore, is not spent, it is merely advanced.
Capital, says Marx, is money circulated for the purpose of making more money. This is the starting point of capitalism itself.
Why did the Industrial Revolution begin in England? And why did the Industrial Revolution begin in 1760? Many economic historians have grappled with these questions. China in the 9th century, ancient Rome in its heyday were highly developed. We can imagine capitalism appearing in those settings. There are at least 20 theories about why it occurred in 18th century England. I favor one that a global research project came up with. This is what the project concluded. They said that for certain reasons, England had the highest wages in the world at that time, twice as high as in continental Europe. It's well established that this hurt the competitiveness of English textiles, and textiles were the only export of England. At that time, England was an agricultural nation. Textiles were the only export. Those soaring wages drove mechanization, and that is very significant. Capitalism was energized by high wages, and that remains true. You see the same situation today. Technological revolutions within capitalism are always mass segment phenomena. But when wages are low, workers lack buying power, and this inhibits such revolutions. In the US, median real wages have been stagnant since 1975. When you take inflation into account, American wages are about the same today as in 1975.
For a long time, family income rose and rose until it stopped.
Japan is in bad shape as well. Since the bubble economy burst, real wages have hardly budged. Germany too has had stagnant wages since 2000. Excess production and falling sales are rampant. Production capabilities are not being fully utilized. This is causing companies to shy away from further investing in themselves. Instead, they are investing heavily in financial markets. The worldwide leveling off of wages is very dangerous for capitalism. Looking at many countries since 1975, we see a weakening of labour unions and their loss of political influence. Together with a growing fear of job loss, a culture that prioritises saving jobs over growing wages has taken hold. That's extremely dangerous for society as a whole. What needs to happen is profits need to flow to workers instead of only to billionaires. It's unacceptable for wages not to rise alongside productivity.
Wealth flowing only to the haves. Marx analyzed capitalism in the age of the Industrial Revolution. And he drew this conclusion. The contradictions of capitalism contain the seeds of its destruction.
Now, in Marx's theory, the money belongs to the worker. I'm really simplifying it, of course. He also said there is no way how this can change itself, because if I am a good capitalist and I start giving higher wages to my workers, I earn lesser profit, and the other ones, the bad ones, will sooner or later I will go bankrupt because they will have more money while I'm just maybe having a treasure in heaven and being nice to my workers, but I'm not a good businessman. So Marx said if it's spontaneous and people start giving workers more, they go bankrupt. So there is no way this can happen spontaneously. You must have a revolution.
Marx expected the revolution to happen in the most advanced economy of the age. But when revolution did come, it came to a vast but much less developed country, Russia. The leaders of the Russian Revolution aimed to make everyone equal. How did that turn out?
Marx was very famous for saying that he's not Marxist. It, of course, brings one to think if Jesus Christ would be Christian today. I don't think so. If Buddha would be Buddhist, I don't think so. I come from a country, former Czechoslovakia, where his ideas were tried in reality, and it was an utter and unforgettable disaster. This must be said in the beginning.
The Russian Revolution did not achieve a society where all are equal. After 7 decades, Russia's monumental experiment in socialism ended. So, was socialism a short-lived nightmare? Or a prematurely born utopia?
I hate when serious people are more crazy than crazy people.
Me too, right? It's bad when a metaphysical hypothesis can be tested.
Yes.
Right? This is bad news. But I think fundamentally, capitalism can be defined as the totality of institutional operations that have as an outcome the production of a good. Right? Capitalism now, I think, both the system and the theory of the system, that is economics, is fundamentally identical to just the production of goods. So what does it mean to produce something, right? I mean, if you look obviously at the etymology, it means to bring something to the fore. So to produce something is, right, you show something. So a production is a show in a certain sense. Then, like in Facebook or this conversation, is a production of a good. And there are conditions of production of this good, including the cameras, the directors, our intention to talk to each other, etc. And capitalism is now an economic system with all sorts of ways of measuring, as it were, the show. It can't be a coincidence that these days, right, I mean, Donald Trump can be, in a certain sense, a major face of capitalism and at the same time someone who runs a reality TV show. I think capitalism is a show without alternative. Then we could say that Donald Trump's strategy is completely different from a classical strategy. So it's not about steel and protecting steel, it's not about jobs and protecting jobs, it's about selling a show. So the way in which wealth is generated by the current US administration is precisely in the form of a show.
You're fired!
So one of the biggest American goods these days would then be...
spectacle.
Yeah, it's the spectacle.
Yeah.
Maybe one of the reasons why we have so many fakes, right, in conditions of mass production, including fake news in the infosphere, the fake would then be the ideal product. So the best product that you can sell, there's always like a leap and you lose touch with the ground.
A spectacular show is the best product. The curtain is drawn on a new world of desire.
The economy is booming, but he's got bad communication skills. Doesn't know how to say the right thing. People are confident in him. They're confident in his ability. They're confident in what he wants to do. So they're feeling more confident in the country as a whole. So I know for myself, I feel freer to make investments.
I think it's probably the natural state. It's a little more law of the jungle. If you look, I mean, lions and tigers and monkeys, they don't have socialist societies that much. So I think we're all animals, and ultimately that's kind of that's what succeeds. There are poor people, they're disadvantaged, and there are people on the streets who don't have food, and usually they have a mental problem, and it's really sad to see. But that's kind of the cost of freedom for everybody.
While money flits across borders, making more money for some, others are left behind. A world torn apart by desire.
We will build the wall. Don't even think about it.
Man, no wall! No man!
It's not going left. It's not going right. It's not going up. It's not going down. Where is capitalism headed?
You know, the story is we take political refugees, but not economic refugees. Those are just people that want to feel better. They just want to be like us. This is not allowed. But isn't it exactly the other way around? Millions, 10 millions of refugees coming here for economic reasons, precisely to work in our stead and to maybe even consume in our stead. And we were fine with that. Nobody was raping nobody, allegedly. There was no negative sentiment. There was very little connection between that and Islam. And suddenly, exactly in the moment when the refugee situation becomes political, when the refugees actually do want to ask us, not for work, but for help, we say, no, this I think is a problem. So actually we like economic migrants. We welcome them by tens of millions. And the moment they become political, no, because it doesn't fit in the logic. Even though intuitively we believe it the other way around.
When did it all start? When did politics become a cover story for economics? Outwardly friendly, but underneath, enemies. How did this contradiction come about?
And the wrong way to look at it, and this is part of what we call populism. This is, of course, a terrible diagnosis. Populism, but whatever is going on, probably maybe we can find a better term for how to characterize what's going on, right? I mean, this kind of resistance to what used to be called globalization, right? So something's going on in this area. So, and given that globalization is fundamentally an economic process, we have to give an economic account of what's happening, not a political one. Yep. It's not like these 12.6% of the German population started talking to each other and decided to vote, right? I mean, this is not what happened. So what changed, as it were, in the economy so that we witness this, these similarities in various countries on Earth? Also in countries where this is much more rapid, but people aren't yet talking about this enough, say Brazil. Brazil is breaking down right now, so I think Brazil, in a certain sense, is currently the most advanced experiment with capitalism. It's as far as I know, it's the highest level of inequality on Earth, higher than South Africa. You probably know more about this as an economist, whether this is accurate. How would you characterize this breakdown? Again, populism or demagogy is too superficial. I understand that this is not the right word. The same thing happened in Poland. We don't even have to go... Exactly, within the European Union. In a very sort of, I would even say, a country that's very much for and in the heart of European debate, especially in the Sikorsky government. And in 2 weeks, suddenly this sort of evil, I would call it, sort of the force awakens. I wouldn't call it populism. I wouldn't call it even, I would just call it simply dark, evil. Around the year 2015 at the end, in December, Star Wars came out. Star Wars number 7, and the name was Force Awakens. And I think it was a little bit prophetic in that towards the end of 2015, something tectonic changed. And this, I think, is a little bit maybe, I don't think that I come up with a name, but it's this sort of a situation, maybe this is the situation that we really don't want to be good. Why should I help? These are the sort of questions. Why should I help them? They're not helping me. It's an extremely, in a Christian culture, the reaction was much more economic than in Islamic countries that actually did take many of them, many more refugees. Oh yeah, many more refugees, so I think that, I'm very happy with the diagnosis of evil. I think that we need to rehabilitate the category of evil. Now, the philosopher Schelling, I worked about him a lot. I think he has offered the best theory of evil so far. In this text, he argues that evil is indeed a positive force in reality, not just in humans. Right? I mean, every structure or every system, in order to maintain itself over time, has to exclude another system. this is by definition the shape of a system, then a system that doesn't know any external boundary has to create otherness within itself. And this, according to Schelling, is the dynamics of evil. So if a system becomes all-encompassing, his example is the Roman Empire. So we are back at the empire talking about Star Wars. So the Roman Empire starts imploding in the moment where it loses a sense of an external boundary. So indeed, globalization might have created a new form of evil. Once you have a global empire, which is in this particular case an economic empire rather than a nation state, this empire will create evil within itself. And I think this is indeed the new return of the national state, etc. It is indeed a form of evil.
I also used to liken capitalism to a zombie. So not because it's ugly, but because zombies are extremely efficient. Because the basic problem of a human being, an adult human being, is, and I'm simplifying Freud here, to multiply or to eat. This is what we sort of, simple popular psychology says this. Zombies don't have that dilemma because they multiply by eating. Yeah? So it's an extremely efficient tool, but it doesn't work the way we want it to. The problem with zombies is that your loved one loses the soul is replaced by a vacuum, she or he becomes an animal, in a way, even maybe worse than an animal. So I thought that the problem with capitalism is that there's a moral vacuoid in the middle, and my mistake was believing that there's a vacuum. In fact, now I'm of the opinion that there is no vacuum. It's actually a very strong and even predominant moral school or ethical school. The imperative is only do things that are useful, love those who love you, hate those who hate you, do good to those who do good, do evil to those who do evil. Exactly because it is so omnipresent and so strong and so getting it from our mother's milk from birth, we don't realize the characteristics of such system.
It's in the nature of capitalism to constantly expand itself.
Its values, its values of production.
Has to. But given that it's built on the notion of success, right? Success is very important for capitalism. Given that we have success, it wants to control the kinds of things that are currently unobservable. So think of that's exactly how a company works, right? So if you're very successful, right, you made it up there, say, then the next step of maintaining yourself on the level of success is not by just continuing, right? I mean, you can't invent the iPhone and then make the iPhone, right? And so in order to be successful, it's not enough to have made it, but it means that you need a way of maintaining yourself in existence on this level. And how do you do this, right? You make the unobservable observable. And now you price it. So it's in the nature of capitalism.
So I see it now. I, as an economist, see it.
Success, fame, value, money. That Pandora's box can no longer be closed. as creation and destruction are its engine. And what's wrong with reaching for the stars?
The history of capitalism, according to Schumpeter, is the cycle of creative destruction. Destroy, create, destroy, create. That's the key point here. You have to have destruction to have creation. This is the endless cycle of the capitalist world. We are driven onward by this ethic. Schumpeter expressed it aptly. Over and over again, time after time, the cycle ensnares people. They are captivated and captured, time and time again.
Perhaps Schumpeter was right about the path the world has taken to reach this point. But as fate would have it, in the same year that Marx died, Schumpeter was born. Schumpeter later found himself defending the great achievement of Marxism.
We need not believe that a great achievement must necessarily be a source of light, or faultless in either fundamental design or details. On the contrary, we may believe it to be a power of darkness.
Capitalism, too, is a great achievement, but what power of darkness might capitalism conceal? The changing face of greed. The next chapter in our story follows in part 2.